So Dennis Smith is the big return for the Knicks in the Porzingis trade. From a player standpoint, they of course got 2 firsts, and I'm assuming that DeAndre and Wesley Matthews are not in this team's long-term plans. So Dennis Smith is the guy. Can he be a success in New York? Well, I think part of me wants to say no because David Fizdale is not as good of a coach as Rick Carlisle, but I think you could suggest, number 1, a change of scenery sometimes just does stuff to guys. But number 2, between having to play off of Luka in his second season and the fact that the Knicks are all in on this young culture thing, of course that will be affected by if they end up with 2 big-time free agents, but at the moment they're all in on this. Could Dennis Smith be put into that culture and perhaps nurtured a little bit more than he was with Dallas? Because for all the praise that I can give Rick Carlisle for his X's and O's and all that, the dude's a hard ass, okay? And he's the kind of guy where he's got an idea of what every player should be. And if they're not that, then he's either going to give them less playing time, in the case of Nerlens Noel. Granted, Nerlens didn't do himself any favors, but it still happened. The same thing happened with Rondo. Well, Rondo wasn't playing time, but there was like a black cloud over that team, right? And I think somewhat of that happened with Dennis Smith this year. Now, Dennis Smith was still playing, but he didn't have the ball as much. It was going to Luka as much as possible, as it should have, because Luka seems to be on a rise that is rare for most rookies. But you have to assume that that didn't positively affect Dennis Smith. He did what he could with it in terms of improving his three-pointer, but his turnovers were higher, his assist percentage was lower, his usage rate was lower, and just watching them, it seems like he would have those moments where instead of doing the simple play, he would try to hit a home run play because he hasn't touched the ball in a couple minutes, and that ran into problems. You know, he would overdrive into the defense, he would set his mind to, I'm just going to score and that's it. And sure, he may have been able to recover from that, but I think you could also argue it just wasn't going to happen given what happened with Luka. I mean, when I said that those two could be great together, I didn't think Luka was going to be good enough to maybe be an all-star in his first season. I mean, that throws a massive wrench into everything that you've got going on. So now that Dennis Smith is in New York and the expectations are we're going to suck, we're going to go for a high pick, and we're going to go for development, then perhaps there's not going to be as much impatience from everybody around him, right? The players, because we got to remember, most of that Dallas team was full of veterans. The front office, the head coach, all that stuff. So if Dennis has a rough game, he's not going to just feel as much pressure. Like, he'll know, okay, I wasn't very good tonight, and yeah, I've got to get better, but I know that I'm still going to get the ball all the time the next game as well, and that can be good for a young player, right? Now, at the same time, we're seeing how the Knicks are treating Ntilikina right now. I have to assume that doesn't happen with Dennis Smith. I think, while I don't think they've handled the Ntilikina situation correctly, I do think part of the reason that's happening is because the dude really isn't that good. Whereas Dennis Smith is so much better than Frank is right now, at least on offense, to where you have no choice but to play him. So I don't think we're going to get anything weird with that. And I'm also pretty interested to see Dennis and Moutier, because Moutier's having the best year of his career. Granted, the bar was pretty low. But even so, the guy looks like a real NBA player this season. And I'm going to assume the Knicks don't want to just give up on that. So could we see these two playing together at times? Maybe. I don't think that would be that bad for Dennis because Moutier's not getting the ball as much as Luka, so it's cool. And because Dennis's three-pointer was actually decent this year, you know, potentially that could work. And it's not like those two dudes are small. I mean, Moutier is 6'5", and granted Dennis is a little shorter at 6'3", but he also projects to be kind of a physically imposing guard, so there's a chance that those two, for at least the time being, could be a backcourt that could do stuff. Now, Moutier is also hurt at the moment, so who knows when he's going to come back. But I think that's something the Knicks should experiment with if they have the opportunity to this season. Now, if they're forced to make a decision between these two, and I believe they may have to just based on Moutier's contract, I think you got to pick Dennis Smith. But, who knows? There's a chance that Moutier somehow ends up back on this team. Maybe his salary's super cheap, whatever it may be. So, that's something. As for the rest of the team, I mean, we still don't know if DeAndre and Wesley Matthews are going to be on this team by the time the season ends or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if they got traded or bought out. If DeAndre was actually going to be here, he did play 30 minutes last night. I mean, he can still set screens and roll to the basket for Dennis Smith, and Wesley Matthews can still space the floor if he's going to play. So in that sense, it could help him out. But when we look at long-term, Enes Kanter's probably not going to be on this team past this year. Can Dennis Smith and Mitchell Robinson be a thing? Well, they're both very athletic, so there is that. Robinson, he needs to get bigger. He needs to get smarter and just prove he can do more than just be a good athlete at 7 feet tall. Alonzo Trier and Dennis Smith, that could actually be a bit of a dynamic offensive 1-2 punch because, of course, Trier can make plays off the dribble. Sometimes he gets a little too shot happy, but his efficiency has been pretty damn all right this season, and perhaps those two could create a lot of dribble drive opportunities for this team. As for Kevin Knox, Dennis could maybe generate a few more open looks for him. It could just give you one more ball handler to where Knox doesn't have to dribble all the time, because while I like his game, I do think he needs to sharpen up that handle a bit. I still like Kevin Knox the most out of all the young dudes here. I wouldn't say this roster is exactly littered with shooters in terms of guys who are going to be on this team long term. Noah Vonleh has been making them, and we'll have to see if he keeps on progressing there, but it's not like he shoots that many. I also don't know if he's going to be on this team for a long time. To mention Trier once again, I think he can be a pretty alright shooter. The God, Luke Cornett, is at least here for the moment. Damian Dotson, I actually should mention Dotson, because he might be my favorite guy on this team, outside of Knox, to be fair. Dotson seems like an awesome 3-and-D dude, so perhaps he can be the really good fit next to Dennis Smith. Yeah, I mean, there isn't like a Kyle Korver-esque player on this team, but I think there's enough shooting with the fact that they can, of course, just get more shooting to where perhaps the spacing with Dennis Smith could end up being pretty okay. But with everything I'm saying here, I don't want to imply that I think Dennis Smith is going to run the show all the time. This is not a dude who we're penciling in to be a very good player, an all-star, and all that. He's got the talent for it, and he's got the upside. He's got the athleticism, but it's still the decision-making. Is he an efficient playmaker? Can he keep up with the jump shot that has improved this year? These are all questions that are going to have to be answered, but I think there is a chance it could go better in New York than it went in Dallas for the guy. It could also go worse, but I don't know. Call me an optimist.